Okay, this is going to be quite a quick video this week. I'm going to talk about shading. This is a brilliant way of making your glass painting look better, but quite simple. I don't know if you remember this project from last year. It's my front door. Now if you look very closely at Iron Man, you will notice that is shading on his shoulder, on his arm and on his leg, and in a couple of other places, and this gives it a less flat look. So let's show you how to do the shading. There are two ways of doing it. There's an easy way of doing it, and there's an even easier way of doing it. The easy way of doing it, and you see I've painted these flowers. I've left them to dry. Now it's important that they are totally dry. If they're not, the paint will ruck up and you'll get these furrows in the paint. So make sure it's totally dry. I did these about 4 days ago. So the simple method is just to get the same paint again, because it's transparent, and this method only works on transparent paint. Because it's transparent, the thicker the paint, the darker it is, the less light that comes through. So if we want to put some shading on this orange flower here, we simply get the orange paint and add it to the areas where we want the shading. The thicker you put on, the thicker the shading is going to be. It is slightly difficult to see where you've already painted and where you haven't. Right, that's the first method of doing it. Hopefully I can show you a picture of that dry, so you'll see how it's shaded. And that, believe it or not, is the more complicated way. Here's the easier way to do it, and this works both on transparent paints like these and on slightly more opaque paints like the Pebeo Fantasy and the Fantasy Moon and the Prismy. Those tend to be slightly more opaque paints, and this method will work on those as well. Now what I have here is paint I've mixed up. It's grey. It's a lot of clear and just a few drops of the grey colour. So this time we'll come inside for the shading. You just need a thin layer of this. Will look slightly different. We'll go outside this side. Slightly different from the double colour method, but again, the thicker you make it and the darker you've mixed your paint, the darker the shading will be. I'm going to take a bit off there. I think I've got it a bit too dark maybe. Right, again we'll leave that to dry. Now this can be done on any colour. So let's just quickly do some bits on the red. Again, slightly harder to see where you've painted on the darker colours, and also slightly harder to see how dark it's going to end up. Now obviously I've concentrated on the petals and the flowers, but there's no reason why you can't use the same technique, either of these techniques, on the leaves as well. As I said, it does work on any colour. The beauty of this second technique is you're not continually changing paints and paintbrushes, or having to clean your paintbrush. And again, hopefully once those have dried, I'll be able to show you a picture and you can see how those work. Now, flowers are great. This is also a very common technique, as you saw in that initial those initial pictures I showed you of my front door, for cartoony style, manga style designs such as this. Either method will work fine. We'll go back to the double color method. In this one, whoops, I've gone slightly over there. And this one is even harder to see where I've done and where I haven't done. So I'm just going to switch on the light. This might make the camera go a bit strange for a second there. There we go. I think I'll change to my smaller brush there. Just get some paint down in there. There we go. Around the eye. Right, I'm going to carry on and finish this one, but I hope you agree this is a fine, simple technique to add a little bit of shading to your work. But I will emphasize again, make sure that your work is totally dry. Final word, for the opaque colours you need to use the grey method. Because they're opaque already, adding more opaque on the top won't make an awful lot of difference. So for the opaque colours like this, I've used an opaque white on here, and you can see there I've added grey. Right, I think we've finished. Paint's not quite dry yet, but it's tacky dry, so we'll go for it. So here are the three flowers I did. This one here is one I did by doubling the colour. So it was orange originally, and I did the shading with orange. You see how that looks. And similarly, these are the two I did with the grey. As I say, they do give a slightly better finish using double colours or grey, but neither is bad. So horses for courses, and whichever you prefer. But I hope you will think, or like me, that it does add something. I wouldn't use it all the time, but it does add something to your work. Finally, I get our Captain America. I'm not always good with my Marvel and the other ones' characters, but anyway, you can see the subtle bits of shading on the fingers here, the leg, etc. Not too much, just a nice subtle bit of shading. Well, that's really the end of this video. Do give it a try, see what you make of it, and I hope you find a place for it in your glass painting. Happy crafting!